Well, at first I was looking for nothing, as we know, because he approached me. Um, I weren't into seeking out the paranormal. I'd had many things happen to me that I couldn't explain. I just lost within a few years before both of my parents. Um, multiple friends, loved ones, and was having a kind of a hard time dealing with death, but not really. You know what I mean? It wasn't something that was constantly on my mind or whatever. But when I was approached by Ken, it kind of started making me say, well, hey, maybe I could find some validation for the things I've seen. Maybe it'd be nice to know if this guy's, legit, if you really can speak to spirits and he's speaking to ones and they're identifying who they are, that, hey, maybe there is a way to speak to my loved ones, or at least to know that that ain't it. And, and that's kind of what I hung on with for a while, especially in the beginning, was maybe, I looked past a lot with him right from the beginning. Um, just because I kind of wanted to fucking clock. Sorry. Um, I don't know if you can hear that or not, but all right. I think it does that on the other one too. Um, I lost. Yeah, I just lost all train of thought. But yeah. So like when I started with Kent, it was I kind of knew he was not really all on the up and up, but I didn't know how much, because he really weren't doing anything extraordinary then. So it left me at the, hey, there's a guy who's honestly out there looking for answers. I kind of bought into his little fucking deal. Looking, and looking past some of the things I've noticed that weren't right with him, just so that I could continue on that path of maybe finding an answer. And we saw where that got me. Because now it's I don't really follow anything paranormal. I don't have a lot of thoughts on it, you know what I mean? Like, I'd say even before Ken, I probably thought about life after death more than I think of it now. I think now I think less of it. I think I don't allow myself to ponder it anymore. It's a thing of my past now. It's in a way that's good for me, so right, that I'm gonna talk to loved ones. I mean, he clearly said my cousin was communicating with him, that he was hearing her voice, and she's talking to him, and she's telling him things. I mean, yeah, I mean, so I was 100% led to believe that that was the case, so that's what I was expecting. Well, I know I had before I met Ken, I had a lot more faith that there was family around me, that the afterlife was here and it was, real. Now it's really hard for me to grasp my head around any of that. You know what I mean? Now I've kind of gone back to how I used to be, where I debunk everything. Like, there's, I mean, it would take, I mean, something to come right before me. You know what I mean? And manifest and speak to me, and I mean, and I probably still wouldn't believe it. I don't know. It's kind of made me more skeptical than I ever was, and in a way, that's sad. You know what I mean? I think people should have hope. I mean, that's kind of the whole purpose of believing in an afterlife and believing in a heaven and believing in, Valhalla or whatever you believe in. That there's something better when you pass. You're just not done. That this isn't it, right? And that's kind of been taken away in a sense. You know what I mean? And I don't know why. I mean, I don't think it should really change what I've seen and what I've felt in the past. But man, it really put a dark cloud over everything. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because now, where I would have paid attention to a voice I heard or something that I saw, I pay it no mind now. It's like I don't even, it's, I mean, don't get me wrong, I still love going to a cemetery. I still love how that feels. I mean, I think every time I go on a motorcycle ride, I end up stopping in the cemetery and checking it out. I've always loved that. I still love that. I still feel like when I go to the cemetery that I am close with them because I think that's habit for me. You know what I mean? And it's a comfortable feeling. But aside from them things that I've always done, anything new or anything, I don't even want to hear it. You know what I mean? If people, like, I don't know, it sucks. You know what I mean? It sucks to to feel let down. Yeah, I don't. I understand that because I don't really give it very freely either, and I did with Ken. I opened right up with that guy. I let him in. I mean, and you've met him, and you know he has a way about him. You know that nervous little laugh he does, how he's almost childlike, you know, in ways when he jokes, and and he knows the right things to say to people. He, even though he doesn't anticipate that most people that he runs into are a little smarter than him and can see through the things that he's doing or how he's fishing because he's constantly fishing to how he can manipulate somebody. You know what I mean? He's always doing it, but he's very tricky. You know what I mean? He's a good con man. And I don't like to think that I'm easily given into them because historically I haven't been, but I did to him. You know what I mean? I mean, I told people about him and the things we were doing, and I usually don't share much with people about my personal stuff anyway that I'm doing. You know what I mean? Especially things like that are considered out of the norm and weird. But I was telling friends I had friends that I actually brought to Kent's house. My very best friend from growing up, I brought him and his wife to Kent's. They wanted to experience it. They said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, this is what the guy's saying. You know what I mean? This is what he claims. This is what I've seen and heard or whatever. Well, come make your own decision." You know what I mean? And I'll tell you, they didn't want to be on video. They weren't about that. Kent did put a YouTube video out about them, and he didn't show their faces. They didn't want to be on there. So there's a lot of audio, and we directed the cameras away from them most of the time. But when they left the next day when I talked to them, they're like, "Dude, that guy's full of shit." They're like, "We experienced nothing. Everything he said, how he tried to lead us around and everything else." They're like, they saw right through him immediately. And of course I apologized to him, and I was actually happy that they found because at that time when they had came was when I was already starting to be like, well, I gotta get some stuff on this guy. You know what I mean? Because I'm gonna catch him. That's was my thought. Like I'm not gonna let him keep going further because that was about the same time too. He started making up all the stories, and twisting things around. So right, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you're not using actual family names and twisting actual events and and starting and you're not claiming that murderers that were convicted that confessed and everything else were not actually the ones, it was somebody else from some other family. You really you're really crossing a line there. I mean that's beyond anything normal that I oh well yeah. Yeah, he says he was, but he was kind of like a by marriage, twice removed, some crap like that. You know what I mean? He really, I like that guy. I don't know how to put it, but he's a little slow. Um, and he's constantly, I see him posting, trying to find out about his family history and this and that. And he has some, old family albums or whatever. But a lot of the things that Kent told me that guy stated, I was able to show Kent that no, here's actual newspaper clippings and everything else that's showing you that guy is wrong. That the people that he's saying his family members that died and this and that and certain things are not the names aren't right. They're not nothing. And Kent says, well, that guy's he swears by it or whatever, and it's his family out, so I'm going to believe him. So okay, you know, you're choosing what you absolutely, because that stranger was saying what the narrative that play his story played along with the narrative, and of course, whatever Kent's saying, that guy's the type of guy who's gonna play along with that because hey, this guy's paying attention to me. This guy's interested in my family history, so I keep going with it. And that's what Mark was doing, and Kent was using him. Using him simply because the guy was, oh, he's related. You know. Well, my thing was always when he was around. Well, if he's related, see if he'll take that test. To see against them bones you found that you dug up of Rachel's. If that Rachel's cousin. Now we. What's funny is this guy was claiming that Rachel was his cousin, and it's well known, right, or whatever, or aunt, or whatever the hell he was claiming. However, we know Rachel never existed, so that blows that guy's anything that guy says right out of the water because obviously he's a liar. It's document like there's absolutely zero documentation that that woman ever lived. The town historian claims she never lived. Um, I would assume she never lived. you know, it, it multiple times over the course of a year. I tried to just kind of like ghost him. You know what I mean? Like I just didn't I didn't get a hold of him. I tried to, I'm busy when he asked, and in general, I was busy, I work. And at the time, he didn't. And, it was constant. He wanted, always wanted me down there, always wanted this. And it was when, from the beginning, I started noticing things, but when it was the stories about Edmund, and it went from, a rape by a black guy to an abortion to a killing, it just all these things. Right then, I was like, I got to be done with this because, man, I'm from this town. You know what I mean? We get generations here. I love this place, and I love history. And here's this guy who's just twisting the history of the place I love. I'm like, I cannot be associated with this. I didn't want people around town to know I was associated with him after he started doing that. So I kept trying to get away, but in the time he had me employ his son, so I was still tied to them in that way. His son was working for me, and so I kept being brought back in. I mean, I had to go there every day and drop him off, and pick him up. So it was all, I'm back in it again, kind of like trapped back into it, and I'm kind of at that time going through the paces, and and if he still had the videos up then, and I have a bunch of videos that I had taken during that time, but you'd realize that like it's always me asking Edmund that, not like, Edmund, why did you do this? Like Kent always was. It was always me asking, hey Edmund, now's your chance, man. There's a lot of accusations against you. Can you come forth and and tell us, did you do this? Did you not? A lot of bad shit's being said about you. And I kept doing that. And I know that used to make Kent mad. And that's one of the reasons I did it. Besides just if there's a spirit that's listening, this poor Edmund. You know what I mean? Like this guy and his wife, imagine if they really are residing still there in the afterlife in that house, what they're going through. You know what I mean? Like I still, when I go to my dad's grave, my grandparents' grave, I swing out around to Edmund every time and I stop and I apologize to him. And that may sound weird, but it helps me because I feel guilty that I had anything to do with that. You know what I mean? It's a lot of it is like when I was doing the stuff with Ken, I was also a member of the Snowmobile Club and I was donating hundreds of hours, of my time to that because it was a civic organization. It was something that helped the good of others, people in my community. I'm, you know, very community based. I've been that way since I was a kid. When I was a kid, I was always advocating for things at the rec park or whatever at the other town I grew up in. And, so even as I'm older, I, I want things right. I want the proper history to be there, like it's just everything else in the world that they're taking history away and they're hiding things and this and that. So why do we have to take it another step further and just lie about things? I mean, these people have passed, but they shouldn't be forgotten and they shouldn't be taken advantage of. Their memory should not be a false memory, you know? I still like when I go to the cemeteries. I get mad as a friggin' hornet, and I film it a lot, and I don't do anything with it. But it's like you go behind any of the old cemeteries up here, and you get towards the back, the oldest ones. You get to the ones that are in the 1800s and stuff, and they're smashed all up because the big old trees have fell on them and everything. And then you walk into the woods, and you'll always find like a graveyard of tombstones. There's always chunks and broken pieces that they just didn't even know where they went to or whatever. They just throw down on there, and it breaks my friggin' heart every time. Makes me mad. It's just like that. These people, and you'll see it says perpetual care, right? So that them people or their families paid forever that their grave is going to be taken care of. It's going to be kept nice. It's going to be mowed. If you're a veteran, you're going to get a flag put on it, all that. And it doesn't happen with these older ones because a couple generations later, people stop visiting. You know what I mean? You get a generation or two deep, and people seem to, especially the younger generations now, they don't, they really didn't know their grandparents or their great grandparents or their great aunts and uncles, so they don't pay them any respect. And I find that the way to know people like that is to go to their graves and wonder. You know what I mean? So it's terrible when I go to them places and I just see it's unkept. It's them are the things that get me. So that all boils down to when I'm doing stuff with Kent and he is lying about people, the dead, that gets me. That gets me more than a lot of people. I mean, I got really mad and people couldn't wrap their head around when when I started Hoax the Caramel Maine. Now, that was a lot in the defense to put out there like, no, this is the truth because there was so much mud being thrown at me, right? And I made that because I wanted to make sure history stayed correct. That somewhere, if somebody wanted to seek it out, they would find out the truth, because there's not that many, ways to find the truth about our history. Yeah, well, that was the thing is, his son was working with me. We did the farmhouse investigation, right? We got there. He did a lot of things in that investigation that I did not like, and that was the one that I was done with. That was the very last one I went. That was the one that got on TV. The one, the haunted farmhouse or whatever, and he edited that one out to show me, making it look like I was verifying that all these weird noises were in fact, unexplained. When I know that it was a dog, and I was actually stating that it was a dog in a cage above us. He had done the thing where he was grabbing the homeowner's freaking brassiere and holding it up, talking about how big her tits were. And then, knowing that he'd been there for 2 hours before me, what the hell was this guy doing? So, I mean, I started getting really disgusted by him and his actions. And then it became, with his son and how that all boiled down, without getting into that nightmare. I had to cut ties with him, and I was already cutting ties with Kent. His son actually knew that I was ghosting Kent. It had been at least a couple weeks since I had talked to him before Kent came out, and he got mad because somebody asked me something, and I said, yeah, it was hogwash or whatever, the Village Triangle video he did. And that started the whole fucking thing, right? I was this bad guy and all this. So there used to be lives that I had, and I don't think I have access to them anymore, where he was talking about them then. Nah, he's deleted all them old videos that was that stuff. As soon as I started talking about all them things, shortly after I started Hoax of Caramel Maine, he dropped they got rid of 40 videos or something, man. Like we used to do a video every week, so there was a lot of videos with me in it. And in the beginning, it was only a few months into me being with him, 3 or 4, that he started in with starting to twist some stories about Edmund. It was actually because winter came and he couldn't go out anywhere. So it became time he had to be inside. So that was also the time that he went right before and went to um, was this Al Brady, the gangster that got gunned down in Bangor back in the day. He went to his grave, and then supposedly that guy followed him home and was haunting the house and pissed off all the spirits in the house. And Kent had to rebuke the guy from another house across the way, which is kind of weird. But it was just always of him carrying something back so he could sit in his house and still do videos, because now he's got this other spirit and he can continue on with the story by it following him to his house. But all right, so Kent was behind the scenes with everything. Kent never hit me head on with nothing. He avoided, because he avoided, like, in public saying too much bad about me. I mean, I have some screenshots, this and that, of stuff people sent me from his group saying some things, but it was, for the most part, he always tried to steer people away on his group. But he had his two little henchmen, his admin and his mod. These two girls, the same two that lied about me in the smear video he did about me. They were like, they were relentless, man. They were coming onto my pages and saying things and going all over YouTube to everybody's stuff and saying things about me, and talking about my business and everything. So it was, and you could tell everything that was being said, everything that was done was orchestrated by Ken. It was clear. These people knew me from nothing. They didn't know me at all. In fact, like, the ones that were doing it had just come about within like a month of me being with Ghost of Carmel, getting done with Ghost of Carmel, Maine. So they really had no ties to me either. So it was easy for them, for Kent to be like, oh yeah, well, this guy's this, and they bit right into it, and they were rotten and nasty, man. Like, bad. Uh, couple times, town employees had stopped me in the store, once at the town office, explaining to me how people had been calling and asking to do interviews with the town manager, and asking if even the girls that were answering the phone, if they would talk and do interviews about how our town was founded by witches and Satanists and all these crazy things, and they weren't real happy about it. You know what I mean? And I'll be quite honest with you. A majority of the people in this town had no idea Kent was doing anything for the longest time. And in reality, I think what brought it to light was when your documentaries started, and of course when we started advertising that they were going to be showing it at the theater and everything. A lot of the local people got keen to it, and I had more people asking me about it. So a lot of people were excited in the sense of, oh, it's Carmel. What's this about Carmel? Not thinking it's going to be something like it was. Exposing this guy and these people finding out that, oh wow, this guy's saying things about our ancestors. This guy's not even from here, and he's making up a history about us. So I had a lot of people, and it actually helped me out to that every person that I ran into and they talked to, or said, "Hey, I've seen you were in this thing," and they were all like mad, not at me. They're mad at Ken. They could not believe somebody would do that. They couldn't understand it. A normal, rational person cannot wrap their head around what this man's doing. You know what I mean? Just for a YouTube channel, which, and saying that too about, like, when your videos, Ken hasn't made no videos lately. I see him working. I'm kind of hoping that the guy maybe is finally figured out that an honest day's work is the way to go. You know what I mean? Because it certainly weren't honest what he was doing before. In all them times of lying about not making money, having GoFundMe accounts by other people, or his son putting it in his name and saying, "Oh, Dad would never ask for this, but the Ghost of Carmel family, can you help us out to bury, my brother or whatever? We need $10,000." I think they got like 3,000 something dollars out of that. So people can say he never gets money, doesn't do anything. We know he does from YouTube, but he got money from that right there. all based on the fact that these people watch his videos that are all lies about people. You know, that it's all lies. So it's really it's dirty money as far as I'm concerned, and it's freaking wrong. You know what I mean? It's oh yeah, drug addicts. That I do jobs and don't finish them. I take money from people, and never finish them, which I've never taken money for a job before I've even finished a job ever. So that's kind of funny. And but anyway, yeah, we were drug addicts, which really affected Tammy. Well, to me, I don't care. Everybody knows I'm not a fucking drug addict. I've never been one, right? So, um, Tammy, on the other hand, has struggled before, right? She's been clean now for how many years? 20. For 20 years. It's 20 years now that she's been clean. I think at the time with Kent, it was like 16 years or something. And Kent knew that. So, that's why he lashed out with that. He did the most hurtful thing he could do. And it hurt, man. It hurt her, which hurt me. Man, she had a lot to deal with there. She worked right next door to him in the store. She worked with his wife at the time. She's naturally assuming that people are going to hear these lies he's telling about her. And that was crushing to her, man. You know what I mean? Like you met her. You know how she is. She's a sensitive, sweet person, right? And that hurt her a lot. We had a lot of things with that. Oh no, she wouldn't talk about it. But yeah, I think she's doing better with it. I think all of this has helped the whole process. It was a long time coming for us, but when you came along and you started doing this, it was the most positive thing I've seen with Ghost of Karma Main situation since it's began. Like the most positive thing to come out of it was somebody actually standing up, somebody that wasn't from here, that made their way there with the assumption that what they were being told, just like me, was true. And they went there and they found out for themselves. And they noticed some things like I noticed. And they looked into it and they did their due diligence. And that you actually contacted me. The day you contacted me, I said, finally, you know, I had hoped when you did your thing, I was like, and I had this feeling, I'm like, this guy's gonna be legit. This guy is. I think he's true to his word. I just had a feeling, and you went there and you were true to what you always claimed, which is you were going there and you were gonna see if these claims were real. And that's helped. It's helped out a real lot. You know what I mean? Because it's helped me as far as other people. They're more apt to not hear me because it's easy to throw me under the bus, make me be the bad guy. It's easy for Kent and his followers to do it because I fall right in line. Now I'm the perfect pawn. Um, for them to blame everything on. I mean, they were blaming you on me. You know what I mean? Like everything. But now I think people can see that. Oh no, it ain't this scorned guy that Kent fired. You know, it's no legitimate smart people have analyzed this and talked with others and and groups of people now, and you've gotten so many more people aware. And honestly, the same circle I've been around in since I was getting done with Kent when I started reaching out to debunkers and got in with the debunker world. I got with the Shape, and I was while I was Kent, I was Shape's admin on his first group. So um, Kent didn't like that, but I needed, I wanted to learn more. You know what I mean? I started seeing all this shit that this guy's showing me, EMF meters and spirit boxes and all this to somebody with some common sense and 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 a mechanical background. None of that made any sense to me. You know what I mean? So um, no, not really. I think they kind of just helped me verify that I'm on the right track with things. You know what I mean? Like it just helped me say, oh yeah, 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 right, I'm on the right track with this. Or there was nothing really that I've seen now. There's been a yeah. I want to tell you one of the things that I have learned is that for the most part, the debunkers out there are in it to actually debunk. I think there's a couple out there that are there more because they figured it was a good niche to get into, or niche, or however you say that, to get into. Um, Kind of like Kent did in the beginning with the paranormal. You know, he heard it, you could make a lot of money doing it. So, um, and I think there's a couple like that. Like as you know, there's one person in the debunking community who was given Kent's drive and got to witness everything, got to see everything. Now Kent was telling him, "No, this will prove that I didn't alter anything," which in fact was told directly to me that no, once he got that, it 100% proved that he's done all this stuff, and he saw everything Kent has done, and he kept it to himself because he didn't want to mess with Kent's mental health. Um, well, fuck the way I see it, fuck his mental health because his mental health is not caused by anything but whatever manifests in his own fucking brain. It's not caused by me. It's not caused by some debunker who calls bullshit on his thing. It's caused by him. End of the day, it's all him who created all of this. I wouldn't know you if it weren't for his lies. You know, I I wouldn't know any of the people. I wouldn't know Crow. I wouldn't know John White. I wouldn't know Dale. Well, it goes by Beardo. I wouldn't know any of these fucking people or ever associated in any of this circle, which a lot of them are really good friends now that I talk to quite a bit. If it hadn't been for yeah, that is kind of a pretty there's a lot to that. Um, I don't know. I think what I'd hope anybody would take from all of this is that them little lies and little things that you do to try to get that you're trying to do to get clout or to get clicks and likes and views on your YouTube channels. If you're lying about people, you're doing all this thing, and you gotta stop. Like there's a lot. I mean, Kent's not the only one. I think he's kind of unique in the sense that I have never seen anybody else twist the real history around so much. I've seen people make stuff up or stuff go flying and things like that. He took it to a whole new level. And I I'd like to see and people make sure other people don't do that. I'd like to see more people stand up to this shit. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking about like a lot of the excuse me, a lot of the Florida fakers. These guys that are just chairs are getting stacked up and there's obvious edits and all that. That's entertainment. Them guys are not really acting or anything or even claiming to be like really investigating the paranormal. I mean, and you'd have to be a fucking idiot if you actually thought that's a paranormal investigation and that you're. So to me, I see it as entertainment. I don't even see it like a lot of debunkers will. They're fixated on it because they got big followings and it's easy to debunk. Really, nobody jumps on Kent. Why don't anybody jump on Kent? Because it's just like all of them have told me. He has so much videos. There's really nothing like he has the few Shadow Dude ones, which you clearly debunk. Like, and there's nothing except for hours and hours and hours of boring monotone voice asking questions to spirit boxes. And it's the same thing over and over again for hundreds of videos. Who wants to debunk that? Who's going to sit and spend the time? No one wants to. That's why he's got away with it so much. Until someone like you went to his place and experienced the shit and said, "Hey, wait a minute." I think he's got 200 something thousand subs. That number hasn't moved in like well over a year. I think it's actually gone down. And I don't think anybody. Well, you look at his views. His views have black for the last 2 years anyway. They've dropped. if you have 200 something thousand people and you're getting like 20,000 views, and yeah, if that, right? You're not doing as well as you think you are, and you might as well stop lying. Yeah. Um, what it do? Well, I can tell you for at least I don't know 2 or 3 years, made me a pretty bitter person a lot of the time. Um, Mostly because when I'd open up Facebook, I was either getting a threat or I was, seeing something said about me or something. And I'll be 100% honest with you. Uh, I'm I'm not a guy that receives that well. Like, I like to stand my ground. I don't like to just sit back and let things hit me. I like to move forward. Like I want to retaliate, and that's one of the reasons why like I ended up doing Hoax of Carmel, Maine. It was more of, oh, these people are saying all these rotten things about me. Well, I got back at them in a way, like with the memes and things like that, and it was a way for me also to like show that because I used to. If you dig in there, you'll see I sometimes I shown things that they would say about me or whatever, or it would also, in the comments, people would just fucking say rotten things to me, and then I'm the jerk for, getting mad about that. Well, literally, no, man. I'm a guy that if anybody said anything remotely like that to my face, I'm gonna punch you in the mouth. You know what I mean? Just that's how I was fucking raised. That's how I am. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. If you can't take two, right? Well, that was our fucking motto growing up, and I had to sit back and let this shit happen. Like, I have a child, I have a wife, I have grandkid, I have all these things that prevented me from doing that thing, like that primal man thing, and nipping this shit right in the bud, and like, nah, I had to kind of I had to like, for the first time probably in my fucking life, I had to be a victim. You know what I mean? I was a fucking, and not in a bad way, man. You know what I mean? I don't want to take anything away from people who have real fucking problems. This ain't a real problem. This is all a mind fuck problem. You know what I mean? The things he said about me really didn't, in hindsight now, the things he said about me and the things he said about my wife only harmed our egos. It didn't fucking do fuck all to affect our life. Nobody outside of this Kent's world um has thought anything different of me and my wife. People know us. You know what I mean? They know the people we are. Um so in hindsight I can see that I had a lot of wasted fucking anger. I had it for a long time. I was angry, and I was a bitter person, and it ain't fair. It weren't fair to my family or whatever, but it was just I had a lot of shit stacked on anyway, like everybody does in life, right? And then you got to do something like now you're the victim and you got to play this role because you don't know how to get out of it because I don't know how to be one. You know what I mean? So I didn't know how to like just get out of it without honestly violence, right? And so I just kind of had to like take it and do the best thing I could, make a stupid fucking Facebook page like a child, and try to say no, 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 what he's saying's a lie. It's fucking belittling, really, to have to go to that and to feel that way. Which, as we discussed, this is all hindsight now. This is now. I mean, now I see it, man. Now I hop off my fucking nice Harley and I fucking walk into the store, and there's this dirtbag that was saying all these things about me out back making people sandwiches and pizzas, right? For fucking minimum wage. I'm not saying that there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm saying this guy was gonna be a star according to him, And my fucking life's great. Still. It never was bad. I just perceived it was bad because I was letting his negativity flow into my life. Well, now I've kind of let that go. Like, my wife still holds on to it some. She don't go by his house without fucking giving him the finger. Fuck you, Kent. You know what I mean? Which that's her way to get through it. I did it for the last 3 years. I don't do it anymore. I laugh. When I see him, I fucking laugh. I laugh at him. He's a joke to me. You know what I mean? And it's a joke that I I played on myself because I let it happen, man. I let this shit happen. I let him do this. And sorry, I mean, I can't blame him completely. I got to put some blame on myself, and I'm fine with that because fuck him. You know what I mean? Like my life's great, man. I'm sitting here in my fucking house. I don't pay anybody rent. I'm sure he's barely paying rent as always. I just that I know that my life didn't change to anything worse. I had a little mental fucking issue, but that ain't real life, man. That's just caught up in it. But we're past that. I am anyway, and I think Tammy's getting there. And you know, it's what it is. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about everything. I guess. Well, man, I after we'll start with after high school. I went right. I did delayed entry into the army. So I signed up a year before, and I drilled like with the National Guard and stuff like that for my whole senior year. Then right before I went away to basic training, I had signed up. Of course, I'd been in for a year by then, but I still hadn't gone to training, and I got jumped by a guy and got my guy beat me with a pool stick, and this up here he fucking broke my teeth, and I had stitches here and everything, and it postponed me. I had stitches this way on the outside and this way on the inside, and so I had to postpone me. So instead of going to where I was supposed to go to basic training, I ended up going to the field artillery one in Fort Sill. But that was the thing. That's what started it with my teeth, and then years later, I'm catching shit from people because of how I look in a video, right? Because after I gave up my career, I had no insurance. But anyway, back to this. So I finally got to go away. That healed up, and I went away to basic training and AIT. Did my time through that. I did 4 years total, um, and then I came home and I said, "Well, I went the exact opposite way. I started fucking riding motorcycles and hanging with like badass old bikers and stuff. I worked at a motorcycle shop. I did various things. I was an iron worker. I was all these things. I finding myself. After coming home from the service, had a pretty wild life, pretty wild time. One day, my brother he got out of college and took a job doing websites for a medical company. And this was long before eBay or anything. E-commerce was just coming about. This was, mid late '90s or whatever. And he told me that he could get me a job making decent money, just how just coding websites. And the only thing was, it was full benefits. It was my own office. It was all this shit. I just had to cut my dreadlocks off. So I, so I did, and that was a lie. The boss never told me I had to do that, but he just wanted me to cut my dreads. So that changed my whole life. That moment, it changed everything. I'd walked away from the biker lifestyle for a while. I took that job, cut my hair, went ended up moving to Rhode Island. Worked for a major company there. Did a bunch of marketing, e-commerce, media development stuff. Um, then my son's mother, when my son was 5 months old, she died, and I stayed in Rhode Island for about another year. And then I had already owned a house up in Maine since my early 20s. So I packed up my son, all my stuff, and moved to Maine, back to Maine. And we lived there until and then I met Tammy, like, I think it was 6 years after that. And from the time we met, we were together. And we ended up building a house back here in Carmel because what I wanted to do was my family land. I got family all around me, and we've been here. And there's a better school system and everything for my son. So when my mother died and everything, I took the land that my family land that my father had passed on to me, that his father had passed to him, and I built a house on it for me, my son, and my wife. And that's how I ended up back in Carmel. I was born when I was born. I lived in Carmel. I lived 2 houses up from where Kent lives in the Village Triangle. So, but yeah, that's fucking pretty much it in a nutshell. You know, man. I mean, now I came back here and I just became a carpenter. You know, went back to the skills I learned as a kid. You know, and in the army I was a combat engineer, carpentry masonry specialist. So that was one of my MOSs. So I kind of fell back on all that, and that's what I do, make a living now. I build stuff. I built the house I live in for out of pocket. I built the whole thing out of pocket. Didn't never took a loan. I've never had a loan in my life. Obviously, I moved my family back here to give my son a better life, knowing that he would have a good life here. See, my grandparents had a farm here, and growing up, they were known by everybody. You know, my Pepe, which is what we called my grandfather, and my May is my grandmother. Um, Everybody from town called them Pepe and Meme. Um, everybody knows everybody here. Like, which is why it's funny that when you ask people about Kent, nobody knows Kent still. So, oh, that guy that works on the store, when you describe him, they're like, everybody's put off by him, but small town, everybody knows everybody. Um, there's always great things, man. It's like, I've had nothing but good happen since we've been here. Everything from my kid being in a better school system and them identifying that, yeah, he's not being challenged and putting him through accelerated classes, and really helping him find his way so that now he just started college a few weeks ago. Um, and it was all because of that school system and they cared and to look at him, because it's a small town. People care about each other. There's a lot of families here, or generations and generations of families. Like I, I know people here that I don't know just because I know their family. Our families know each other, and it's got such a history of it that it's almost like we're related, even though we're not. And it's like, oh yeah, you're freaking blah blah blah's kid, yeah, 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 yeah. So you're good with me automatically. And I didn't get to grow up right in Carmel. My family was here. Um, my parents had gotten a divorce when I was 8, and I moved a few towns away to Winterport, which was a hell of a place to grow up. And I'm so happy. It's another great town that was fun, and I wouldn't change that for anything. But I came back when I was my senior year of high school. I moved in with my dad, and still went to school there and traveled. And I got to work on my grandfather's farm. So I spent that year before I went in the army and everything. The last year of my high school, I got to work on the farm with my grandfather, and get to experience that fully because I really didn't get to when I was younger. And but like the next farm down was the Powell farm, and when I was a kid, we would stop in there and we'd get our milk there. He was a dairy farmer. My grandfather had pigs and cows, so you know boom, we go there, we get cream, we do all this stuff. Stanley'd take me out and let me see the cows getting milked and stuff. And that was another thing that got me. The name Powell is the name of the killer that Kent says is actually the really killer of Naomi, because there's like a name Powell right next to it. He says it's Butch Powell or whatever, which is another person that never existed. But he uses that family name. And that really pisses me off because old Stanley Powell is, there's a write up about him in the town book, man, that's like freaking 10 pages long or something. He's like an awesome guy, and his family always was. But it's a great town. It's a place that people want to be at. This weekend, like this weekend, we have Carmel Days, and every year it's a big celebration where we just celebrate Carmel, right? I mean, we have monster trucks that come, and we have the biggest parade for. All right, so in all of Maine, in all the little towns that have their little personal parades, we have the largest here in Little Old Carmel. Our town manager, who just passed in this last year, he had a tragic accident last winter on the ice, saving his son, who fell through, and he didn't make it, but his young son did. He had taken and turned the Carmel Days into like the greatest event. Like, my family comes up. I got my in-laws and granddaughter and everybody come up from Connecticut to go to it every year. So they're showing up tomorrow. They love it here. They want to buy a house here. Everybody that comes to Carmel loves this place. And boy, don't it piss me off to hear somebody saying how evil this place is, and all this bad shit, man. This place is, to me, is heavenly, man. I love this little town. Like, I'll never live anywhere else. Right. Yeah, it's hard. I've tried to explain to people from the city because I lived in North Providence for a while, and um, they don't understand. And I tried to, tried to explain to people what it's like, and they don't understand. You can explain all you want. You could nail it, and if someone who's from here would be like, know exactly what you're talking about, but they don't, and they don't understand. Like when I was a kid, man, and it was noontime, the noon whistle would go off, and we'd all go home for lunch. Well, if your parents were working or whatever, you were always scoffed up by somebody else's parents. Like, hey, come on, it's lunchtime. They knew your parents were working or whatever. Or you could be walking by and, hey, David, you hungry? We're about ready to have some burgers, or whatever. It, you just going. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to just walk in people's house. Hey, can I get a glass of water? Sure, help yourself. And a random old lady. Everybody knows each other, and that's why I moved back to Maine. That's why I wanted to raise my kid here. I weren't going to raise him in the city, man. There was no way. I weren't going to let him. I wanted him to be a small town person, and he is, man. He's turned right into it, and as he gets older, he's learned to love it more too. You know what I mean? Like how I feel about things. I can tell it's wearing off on him. Yeah. Well, it goes along with what Kenneth told me that all growing up, Kent was always getting kicked out of places, owed people money, was hiding from people that he dicked over on money. They were living in campgrounds in tents, catching fish to eat for supper. Fucking, that's how they grew up. That's how Kent lived. He was always conning people, stealing fucking power from the air conditioner from another apartment. He climbed up on the roof to booster cables off the big air conditioning unit. Fucking ran him down into a thing and ran him down to his house. So they'd had power because he wouldn't pay the fucking power bill and he was squatting in a place. So that's just always how the guys lived, honestly. Like he doesn't know what it's like here. You know what I mean? Like in a small town. Right, like he didn't know his neighbors anywhere he's ever lived. You know what I mean? You know everything about your neighbor here. Christ, I drive by my neighbors all the time, and I have to stop and that we're there for like 3 hours. So half the time you gotta like try not to look because if you look, you're gonna see him and remember something you had to tell him, and then it turns out to. you know, but, but it's just Saturday where they do like a street dance and they had the whole ball field's full of stuff for the kids to do and games and there's food and it's the whole town gets together. There's a huge parade and it's just a fun time, man. Like there's never anything bad that happens. It's great. Oh yeah, you could give people a fucking wormhole to go down. With all the shit that you got, dude. Like people are a rabbit hole. I mean, there's so much shit that you could put for people to see and explore through this and the fact check and fucking. There's so much, that's one of the best things I love about this whole thing is that when I rattled all my shit off to you the first time we ever talked, and we talked for like a few hours, and I just sat here like I do and just fucking blah 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 blah, right? And I made a lot of claims, man. I fucking said a lot of shit about Kent and things, but you actually took the fucking time to check all that shit. You know what I mean? To actually check what I said, and not just listen to what Kent told you about me. You know, Uh, and finally someone did that, and saw that fucking ain't lying about nothing. Like, Trey has undercover thing, dude. It's just like you must have knew kids like that when you were a kid. I Everybody I knew, knows somebody when they were a kid. We had a kid. His name was John, and I was taking martial arts, right? So I was gonna go for one of my belts or something. And next thing you know, he's telling everybody, he's like, "Oh yeah, I just got my brown belt." Well, I was at the fucking kid's house every day. His parents used to take me to fucking camping and do all kinds of shit with them. He never took a fucking day of martial arts then. But he'd tell everybody he did this and everything, no matter it was, like his four wheelers were super modified and the fastest ones out there. They weren't. They were Kawasaki Bayous. They were fucking. They barely went, But him, he just everything was a lie, and he lied so much that he'd actually believe himself, and that's a hard one to wrap your head around when someone does that. Like I think Kent does the same thing. I think he will believe he has the ability to believe his own lies. And he don't do that very well, especially if you're a person like me. That when I was in the back when I was younger and I hung around with them old bikers, they used to have me go with them and meet people just because I would read the situation really well, and I would usually catch things about people that they wouldn't, you know. And so with Kent, I constantly got that. You know what I mean? So and I would catch every time he'd tell me one thing, or if he was fishing for something, like he was with the thing, like with the ghost, calling himself the ghost, and he's a special agent. And it was actually he got it all from a Kevin James movie. But earlier he had asked me if I knew who Kevin James was, and I thought he meant um that other guy, Kevin Smith, whatever, the one that was in the movie with the Rock and all that shit, the little black guy. Um, Yeah, Hart. Yep. I thought he meant him. He's like, no, 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 no. He's a big guy. And I weren't thinking King of Queens guy, right? And so he's like, oh yeah, yeah. So I didn't know who he was as far as him. So I would never have seen his movie. So when we're out in the back between you go into from the kitchen to the fucking garage, and he starts telling me about back when he was a special officer. He would just pop right up on his informants out of the blue, and they'd be like, "Oh, where'd you come from? You're the ghost." And he says they started calling me the ghost and all this shit. Like, and then I was sitting there watching. Me and the wife started watching movies one day on Netflix, and we watched that movie with Kevin James, and he was a writer, and he wrote this character who was the ghost, who was like this undercover like James Bond type guy, and he has to go in and become that guy or some shit. Right, so we're watching it, I'm like, "Holy fuck." I was like, "Tammy, this is the story Kent told me." This is the exact story fucking Kent, and it all hit me. Oh, and this is Kevin James, and that's who he asked me about, and I was just like, "Oh my fucking word." Like, I mean, I knew his lie, you can tell when he's lying. You can tell when he's lying. And with that one, I knew he was lying, but I didn't know that he took it from like a fucking movie, like, what the fuck, dude, I don't get him. Right. Right, the more people learn about this, man, and see this, how could it not touch you in a way? Like, if you have any sort of conscience or decency about you, this story is gonna affect you. You know what I mean? If you've ever lost somebody and you know what I mean? Like, it put yourself in the shoes of others that went through this with Kent, and it's fucking how could you not see? How could you not understand that it's fucking wrong, you know?